Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiti. Hare Krishna. Aho alam yadokulam aho alam punyakamam madhurmivanam yad isapum samrisabha priyapati svajanmana chankramanena chanchati.
Hare Krishna. Let's do the Mangalacharan.
Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnana Jana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mayam Dadanti Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Gurun Shri Yutabadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Sha Shri Rupam Sakrajadam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Satverinam Svavadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Lalita Shri Shakhanvitam. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namoshrute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanushrute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindhubhayeva Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Shashwat, for the wonderful recital of the Mangalacharan. Prabhuji is just driving and he will join us in 5 minutes, but we can continue. We are reading the Srimad Bhagavatam. We are on Canto 1, Chapter 10, and the text for today is text 26. Would anybody like to read the text line by line and we can repeat after you? Arya Govind Prabhu, are you in a position?
Yes, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Aho alam
If you,
slagyatamam yadokulam.
Aho alam slagayatam yadokulam.
Aho alam punyatamam madhorvanam.
Aho alam punyatamam madhurvanam.
Yadesha pumsam vrishabha shriyapati.
Yad yesha pumsham rishabha shriyapati.
Swajanmana chankramanena chanchati.
Swajanmana chankramanena chankati. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandavat Pranam. Please accept my humble obeisances on behalf of everybody who have joined the group and are about to join. Prabhuji, we are reading the Srimad Bhagavatam. We are on Canto 1, Chapter 10. And the text for today is text 26. Prabhuji, we've read the text and we've done the Manglacharan. Prabhuji, I'll hand over to you and you can tell us what we should do in case if you wanted us to read something. So today we have among us Bircandra Prabhuji. We missed him. So we are very grateful that he could have time to join us. Over to you, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, I can't hear you. We can't hear you still, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, we can't hear you. I can see that you are talking, but we can't hear you. Okay, while Prabhuji is sorting. Yes. Hare Krishna. I heard a faint Hare Krishna from you, Prabhuji. Okay, while Prabhuji is sorting his mic, we can go to word. I can do the word to word for this text. Aho, oh, alam, verily. Slagya tamam, supremely glorified. Yadoha, O King Yadu. Kulam, dynasty. Aho, O. Alam, verily. Punyatman, supremely virtuous. Madhovanam, the land of Mathura. Yat, because. Esha, this. Pumsham, of all living beings. Rishabha, supreme leader. Shriya, of the goddess of fortune. Pati, husband. Swajanam, Janmana, by his appearance. Chankramanena, by crawling. Cha anchati, glories. Prabhuji joined us. Has Prabhuji joined us? I can't see or hear him.
He has joined and he's trying to speak, but we can't hear anything.
Okay, Prabhuji, Hare Krishna. We can see you, but we can't hear you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Can you hear me now? No? Hare Krishna.
Very faintly, Prabhuji, we can hear you very faintly.
Hare Krishna, can you hear me?
Jay, we can hear you and see you. Hare Krishna.
So sorry, Mataji. Just switching between sort of Bluetooth devices. Sometimes the computer is a bit slow. Yeah, sincere apologies for being late and obviously the technical difficulties at the moment. Thank you everyone for your patience. Really appreciate it. Please accept my humble obeisances. Srila Prabhupada. We'll start the class immediately without any delay. Thank you for reciting the verse and doing the word-for-word translation. I'll start sharing my screen. And we can start the Sangha. Can you see the screen now?
Not yet. Yes, Prabhuji, we can see the screen.
Right now. Okay, that's great, Mataji. Okay. You can hear me still?
Yes, Prabhuji, we can hear you. We can't hear you, Prabhuji.
I'm back, Mataji. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you, Prabhuji.
I think maybe also there's a bit delay of the connection, Mataji, from my end. I'm very sorry.
Not a problem.
So today we're talking about, the actual introduction to the verse, some translation and some nuances of the Sanskrit, and just to provide some nectar in relation to the actual Sanskrit in the verses, which I sort of listen important. And then an important point that Krishna. There's knowing Krishna and there's actually really truly knowing Krishna. And there's a takeaway exercise and some opportunity for questions and answers, hopefully at the end. So just going over, we basically read through the purport. So thank you so much for doing that. And as all you know, this chapter focuses on Krishna's departure for Dwarka, and verses 20 to 31 will be about the ladies of Hastinapur, discussing Krishna's glories. So this is about Krishna's departure to Dwarka and the ladies of Hastinapur, where Krishna is currently based, with Maharaj Yudhishthira and like, for example, Arjuna as well. They're basically these women of Hastinapur are discussing Krishna's glories. And the later verses, after the verse I'm talking about today, will talk in a lot of detail about Dwarka, the wives of Lord Krishna, the wives of Lord Krishna in further detail, and Krishna's reciprocation with the wives of Lord Krishna, but also the residents of Hastinapur, the ladies of Hastinapur, and in regards to his acceptance of the greetings of the ladies of Hastinapur, and then his smiling and glancing, after which he departs for Dwarka. So those later verses will talk about that. So I won't focus too much on Dwarka itself for the wives of Lord Krishna and Krishna's reciprocation. So we'll focus more on the Yadu dynasty, its glories, its genealogy. So genealogy is a study of the family and family history, and the trace of the actual lineage of the Yadu dynasty itself. And we'll refer to, in some elements, we'll talk about the family trees, like some pastimes. And going back to the verse itself, so just wanted to actually go through the Sanskrit. Again, this is something I've learned from, like I said, Hridayananda Goswami Maharaj, who's very knowledgeable in Sanskrit, and he transmit a lot of nectar in the verse when he describes it. So like I said, this is a verse spoken by the ladies of Hastinapur, praising the residents of Dwarka with beautiful prayers, you know, because they're basically talking about Dwarka, they're talking about the residents of Dwarka, because Krishna's hear other people, other cities glorifying another city. So you don't often hear, you know, one city in the UK saying, "Oh, another city is better," but it's often like, "Oh, we're better than you because we're a bigger city," or you know, one country saying, "Oh, we're better than you because we're, you know, of different material elements." So that often doesn't happen where one city another city or one country is glorifying another country. So with Aho Alam, Slangyatam, Alam is very important. So, and that starts with an exclamation mark, you know, like a big Aho Alam, really loud. Like when one says, "Oh, you know, like this is, you know, that Aho Alam means that this is sufficient." So, i.e., that this verse is going to say everything, and it gives the essence of the importance of Krishna. And this is repeated again in the second line of the verse, Aho Alam again. So when the ladies of Hastinapur say the Yadu family, Yadu Kulam, Kulam is referring to the actual family in the dynasty, and it says it's the most praiseworthy of all the families that are being praised. This family is the most praiseworthy. So there's other families that are praised, you know, in the Bhagavatam, the 5th canto, you know, the actual the different Manus, their family lineage is praised. There's certain personalities like Bharat Maharaj is praised, and you know, like the reason why Bharat Varsha is because of Bharat Maharaj, you know. But this verse is saying that the most praiseworthy family is the Yadu dynasty, Yadu Kulam, you know. So that's the most praiseworthy, and they're saying it with great you know, that they're basically saying this is sufficient that we're saying this, and this means a lot that we're saying this, that this Yadu Kulam is the most praiseworthy. And then they say Aholam again, but then they refer to the land of Mathura, which is Madhur Vanam. And Vanam is referring to the land itself, but Madhur Vanam is actually used in a different context in the Bhagavatam itself. So if you were to search in a Veda base, Madhur Vanam, the land of Mathura is actually is one explanation for Madhur Vanam, but another explanation for Madhur Vanam is the forest known as Madhuvan. And one element of that connects is the connection of this forest to Krishna. So the land of Mathura is also known as the forest of Krishna. So that's why Madhur Vanam is very important, because it's the forest of Krishna. So again, it's referring to Krishna. So why is the Yadu dynasty or Mathura so glorious? Because of Pumsam Rashabha. So the leader of all the men, people, Krishna, the Shriya Prati, the husband of the goddess of fortune, Swajanmana, appeared. He appeared. So it's glorious because the leader of all people, Nityo Nityanam, Chaitanas Nam. So Krishna is basically the source of everything. He's the husband of the goddess of fortune, and he's appeared in that city and in that family. So that's why it's glorious, and that's why Ahor Vanam is also used. But yeah, it's a really nice, sort of very poetic, very nectarine verse, and it's important to understand. It says that it says appearance. So this further signifies the importance that Krishna is not a mere mortal person who takes birth. So he appears. So Krishna, Srila Prabhupada gives a nice analogy in the verse, in the purport itself. He talks about the sun appearing and disappearing on the horizon. So just because the sun appears on the horizon, it doesn't mean, like this is what Prabhupada is saying in the purport, it doesn't mean that the horizon is the mother of the sun. The sun appears or disappears at particular times, just as Krishna appears and disappears by his own inconceivable potency. So that's an important analogy that can be used in a discussion, or to explain why you know, Krishna doesn't take birth, he appears. So just as the sun appears on the horizon, it doesn't mean just because the sun is appearing on the horizon that the sun is taking birth, is the sun, or is, you know, is coming out of the horizon. No, it's the sun is always there. It's based just on our understanding. And then lastly, the last element of the verse is Chakramanena, and basically Chakramanena means it's walked. So Krishna's actually walked in the city of Mathura. So that's also why it's glorious, you know, and close to Mathura is Vrindavan. And yeah, and Vrindavan is like the most glorious city. And we'll talk about why it's the most glorious in a bit more detail later on. So that's basically the verse, Aho alam punyatamam madhurvanam, you know, and then, you know, Madhurvanam again, the city of the forest of Krishna, and then Yodur, and then the Yodur dynasty, the Yodur Kulam is the actual family of the Yodur dynasty. So that's why they're all glorious, and they're glorifying the city, and they're glorifying Mathura as well. Next, we'll talk about the Yadu dynasty itself. So hopefully you can see this. So this is the Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavatam family tree. You know, it's quite complicated, but we're going to just talk about the actual family tree, the genealogy in this green box, because Krishna's there, Vasudev, Vrishni, the Yadu dynasty starts here. Can you see my arrow? Matthew, can you see my arrow?
Yes, Prabhuji, we can
Yes,
see
you
you.
can see it. Yeah. So the Yadu dynasty is starting here, and then we're following from here, Vrishni, Andaka, and so forth. So before we start talking about the Yadu dynasty in some detail, so we can understand that one of the Krishna's purposes to descend on this earth was to remove the burden of the earth. You know, so by getting rid of scrupulous men and kings. And the battle of Kurukshetra took place, and the burden on the earth was reduced. However, the most powerful family was the Yadu family. So no external enemy could defeat this line, this family line. It was that glorious. And the reason for their strength is also, according to the Bhagavatam, that they were very opulent. So that's the reason why they're most powerful. And they couldn't be destroyed by any external force. And there's an actual very unique pastime in relation to so he wouldn't just leave the Yadu dynasty because he felt like it was a really powerful family line, and a lot of them family members in the Yadu dynasty were demigods that took birth, and we'll talk about that in a little more detail a bit later on. And the pastime that took place was, and this is talked about a lot in, I think it's in chapter 1 of Canto 11. And basically, it's the pastime of the Yadu dynasty, the different brothers fighting amongst each other, because that's one of the pastimes that Krishna used. So one of the sons of Krishna basically approached a rishi, and he asked the rishi, pretendingly they basically wore a dress and they covered their womb to make it look like this personality was pregnant, and they asked the rishi what would be the gender of the child. And because they were mocking the rishis, the rishi turned around and cursed the person that you would give birth to a rod that will be the cause of the destruction of your family. So that was the actual cause of the destruction of the Yadu dynasty. And from that rod, basically they took that rod back to Ugrasena, and basically he decided that rod needs to be shaved down and thrown into the water just to protect the family. And there was one last portion of that rod that was left over, which was basically also thrown into the water. A fish actually ate that rod, and then later a personality basically use the rod to actually turn it into a spearhead, an arrowhead, and that was the same arrow that was used to shoot at Krishna before he left this planet. And an interesting point made by Chandramori Maharaj is like, when have you heard anyone dying from being shot in the foot with an arrow? So we can understand just from that it was just a pastime. That was just an excuse that Krishna used to just wrap up the pastimes here on earth, so he would go back to Golokadam. And that was a nice point that I sort of found funny, because I didn't think of it in that context. I just thought of Krishna's leaving, yeah, and that was, some people use that as a reason to say, okay, hold on, this is, Krishna's actually immortal because he died from being shot. But who really dies from being shot with an arrow on the foot? I've never heard that. But anyway, so that was basically the pastime of the other dynasties being destroyed. And but we can talk about how the Yudhin dynasty actually arose and how they actually connected with the Kauravas and the Pandavas. So we Satyavata, we just above this line, you can see my arrow here. So you got Yadu here, Krusta, and many descendants, and you got Satvata was actually a great devotee of the Lord who had two sons, and Andaka and Vrishni. Andaka and Vrishni. He had many other sons, but he had two sons, Andaka and Vrishni. And a few generations after Andaka, Ahuka took birth. Ahuka here. And Ahuka had two sons, Ugrasena and Devaka. Ugrasena and Devaka. And Ugrasena had 9 sons and 5 daughters, various here, explained here. And one of those, his first son was Kamsa. On the other side, Devaka had 7 daughters. He had 7 daughters. And Devaki was one of his daughters. And Shurashena was born a few generations after Vrishni. Vrishni, he was the son of Satvata and the brother of Andaka. And he actually had 10 sons and 5 daughters. And one son's name was Anaka Dundabi. I had to read that. Anaka Dundabi. And his younger brothers, Anuka Dundabi, the actual sons of Shurashena, they married the sisters of Kamsa. So you got sisters of Kamsa here. And Ugrasena's brother, Devaka, he had many daughters, like I explained, and the daughters married Anaka Dundabi, who is actually known as Vasudev. So Vasudev, who's actually the father of Krishna. So Devaki was married to Vasudev. So Devaki here was married to Vasudev. So that's how we know the connection. I won't go into too much detail because it can be quite complicated. Even I got a bit lost in trying to follow the family lineage. So that's basically the story of the actual lineage and how they connected. So if you look at the Pandavas, so Shurashena had a daughter Kunti, and the Pandavas were the sons of Kunti. So from lectures I've listened to, that they say the Pandavas, Lord Krishna is their uncle because they're related. So Lord Krishna is actually their uncle. Okay, so that's how they list how they're sort of related to the Kauravas. And going back to the story of the actual Mother Earth being overburdened by the demoniac kings who weren't acting as representatives of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that's the main primary duty of a king, is to actually be the representative. And he was also taught by, and one of the main duties of a king is to encourage spiritual development. Other elements like economic welfare, security, these are secondary duties of a king. But during this time, when this is basically in relation to the reason why Lord Krishna was born in the Yadu dynasty. So during this time, Mother Earth was overburdened. The kings focused on the secondary duties and not the primary duties. So they're more interested in economic welfare, security, increasing their sort of armed forces, not really taking care of the spiritual development of their citizens. And this basically led to like droughts, loads of natural disasters, and as a result, the Mother Earth was burdened by these demoniac kings. And Mother Earth, along with the Devatas, approached Lord Brahma, and they were praying for help. And Lord Brahma, in return, as a result, he actually approached, and he led basically all the Mother Earth, the Devatas, and they basically went to the ocean of milk, and they basically prayed to Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, and they recited the Purusha Shukta prayers. So I'm not sure if any of you are aware of the Pusha Shukta prayers. So these are the prayers that were recited. So you can come across these on, for example, ISKCON Desire Tree. And they're very nice prayers. I've listened to them myself, and they basically talk about Vishnu and they glorify Lord Vishnu. And from within the heart of Lord Brahma, Lord Vishnu spoke, and he said that Krishna himself would take birth as the son of Devaki in the house of Vasudeva. So you have a wife of Vasudeva. So that's basically how Krishna took birth in the Yadu dynasty. So moving on, and this slide talks mainly about knowing Krishna. So the difference between actually knowing Krishna and thinking that we know Krishna. And I heard a lecture by Chandramuri Maharaj. It was very interesting, and it gave me a lot of food for thought, because the most confidential knowledge is the knowledge of Krishna. We know that. Even in the Bhagavad Gita, it talks about the most confidential knowledge, and Krishna talks about imparting that knowledge to Arjuna. So other forms of knowledge actually include knowing that we are not this body. So that's also covered in the Bhagavad Gita. That we're part and parcel of Krishna again. A lot of these elements are covered in the Bhagavad Gita. So knowing that we're not this body, knowing that we're part and parcel of Krishna, the difference between what is eternal and what is not, and to know the knowledge of how to engage in activities that are beneficial to oneself. So a quick summary can be sort of grasped in the chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita, but a lot of these different elements of knowledge are covered throughout the Gita itself. So, and the most confidential knowledge is of Krishna itself, of himself, especially in reference to his relationship with his devotees in Vrindavan Dham and his activities with them. So that's the most confidential knowledge. So in chapter 18, verse 64, Krishna says that he is speaking the most confidential knowledge, sarva guhyatamam, to Arjuna. So the most confidential knowledge, because Arjuna is his very dear friend. And Srila Prabhupada very clearly states in the purport that Krishna gave Arjuna these following elements of knowledge. So the knowledge that is confidential, knowledge of Brahman, still more confidential knowledge of the super soul within everyone's heart. And then now he is giving Krishna in the subsequent verses, he's actually giving the most confidential part of knowledge. So, and this is basically saying, surrender unto me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in chapter 2, Krishna gives Arjuna knowledge about our actual identity as the soul. In chapters 2 to 18, Krishna gives still more confidential knowledge of the various processes of self-realization. And then in chapter 18, Krishna further goes on to impart the most confidential knowledge, which is the best path for self-realization. That's undertaking Bhakti Yoga. So, and he repeats this confidential knowledge in verses 1865 to 1866. And why is this the most confidential knowledge? We can think, okay, why is this the most confidential? And because there's different levels of still confidential knowledge, because not everyone knows each element of that knowledge that is given in the Gita. So we might not have knowledge about that we're not the body, we're the soul. Other elements, we might know about the modes of material nature, how certain activities should be undertaken. We may know that we're part and parcel of Krishna, or we may not know. So there's different elements, different levels of knowledge that are given. So if we know all levels of this knowledge, and we read all of the Bhagavad Gita, then we realize that the most confidential is Bhakti Yoga, is devotion. And the reason why becoming devotee, practicing Bhakti Yoga is basically devotional service. So the reason why becoming a devotee is most confidential is because through the process of Bhakti Yoga, Krishna becomes purchased by the devotion that we have for him. And this is clearly stated in the Shastra, in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, particularly in Nectar of Devotion, chapter 1. And it talks about the characteristics of pure devotional service. And one of the characteristics is that pure devotional service is attracting Krishna, is Sri Krishna Karshani. And this is basically sort of a section from the Nectar of Devotion, chapter 1, in reference to attracting Krishna. So I'm just going to read it verbatim. Srila Rupa Goswami has stated that devotional service attracts Krishna. Krishna attracts everyone, but devotional service attracts Krishna. The symbol of devotional service is the highest degree. In the highest degree is Radharani. Krishna is called Madana Mohana, which means that he is so attractive that he can defeat the attraction of thousands of cupids. But Radharani is still more attractive for she can even attract Krishna. Therefore, devotees call her Madana Mohana Mohini, the attractor of the attractor of Cupid. To perform devotional service means to follow in the footsteps of Radharani and the devotees in Vrindavan, and put themselves under the care of Radharani in order to achieve the perfection in the devotional service. So in other words, devotional service is not an activity in the material world, it is directly under the control of Radharani. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is confirmed that the Mahatmas, or the great souls, are under the protection of Deva Prakriti. And the Deva Prakriti is the internal energy, Radharani. So being directly under the control of the internal potency of Krishna, devotional service attracts Krishna himself. So the point I'm trying to make here is that we may think we know Krishna, but in actual fact, we don't actually know Krishna. We think we know. So, for example, if you go to India, or if you go to let's just stick with India. We go to India, we can ask someone about Krishna, and they will say, yes, Krishna is God, and we can ask them about who Krishna is, and they might give some answer, but they don't really know who Krishna is in actual fact. And that can only be ascertained through studying the scripture and actually performing the devotional processes that are suggested in the scripture every day to stay on the correct path of this bhakti yoga devotional path. And so when I was actually listening to this lecture of the difference between knowing Krishna and actually knowing Krishna, I realized that I actually don't know Krishna at all. I think I know, but I don't know. Just because I read some books, I have some shastric knowledge, I think I know Krishna, but I actually don't know Krishna at all. So I think that was for me, that was important because it was quite humbling to think that I actually don't know Krishna at all. And I should basically continue focusing on performing my devotional service, so I can actually move towards getting to know Krishna. Sorry, move down. And then basically finish off here. I know we want to create some space for some questions. I always do a takeaway exercise, and I think it's very important because it's all good trying to do these activities, but to prevent them from becoming mechanical, there has to be some reflection and contemplation involved in the activity. So that creates some space for improvement. So this is something that you can do in your own time. So reflect on a time during which you undertook some devotional service. It could have been some japa, some reading. You could have attended a class. You could have visited some devotees associated with devotees. You could have went on book distribution, for example. List how you felt emotionally. Because the practice of bhakti yoga is not without emotion. The emotion is so key in practicing, because we're personal, we're not impersonal. So the reason why I'm actually requesting devotees to actually think about how you felt emotionally is because the emotion can connect us to the service, and it can create a sort of a deeper impression on the mind and the consciousness. So list how you felt emotionally when you carried out a sort of a devotional activities like reading japa, like I said, visiting book distribution. And these are some words that might help you describe how you felt. So maybe you can try to use these words, maybe use a dictionary, try to understand what these words mean, reflect on the words and reflect on your experience. So the words could include content, thoughtful, nurturing, secure, serene, relaxed, confident, valuable, surprised, optimistic, and creative. So you can use, and you can think of your own words as well. And yes, sometimes also during certain services, for example, book distribution, you may not be received by people in the street in the best way, and sometimes that can create a negative impression and create a negative emotion. It's still important to recognize that emotion because it can help you move past that emotion. And in reference to a statement that was made by Swayam Bhagavan Keshav Maharaj, he said an interesting point in relation to emotions and Shastra. And he said, a Kanishta Adhikari sees the Shastra through his emotions, but a Madhyam Adhikari she sees his emotions through the Shastra. So it's important to remember that when we're doing this reflection. And I'll start with a summary. So in the introduction, we talked about the verse, the reason why the dynasty is important. The reason why Mathura is important because Krishna took birth. He appeared within the other dynasty, and he lived in Mathura, and he walked around in Mathura. So that's why those places are important because Krishna is present there. And we talked about the other dynasty itself, the genealogy, how it basically started, how Lord Krishna took birth in the dynasty, why he took birth, and that was one of the reasons. But there's loads of internal reasons as well, which I talked about in the Shastra. So one of the external reasons was to remove impious kings from the earth. And then we spoke about knowing Krishna and actually knowing Krishna. And I think that was an important distinction because I myself, okay, by reading Shastra, by studying, I think, okay, I know Krishna, but I actually don't know Krishna because the knowledge that is present to know Krishna is the most confidential knowledge. And our acharyas know Krishna, and that's how we can get to know Krishna, is by connecting to our acharyas and undertaking our sadhana bhakti. And then the activity takeaway is to talk about the emotions in relation to activities that you've done. It could be anything, like I said. And I'll stop there and give opportunities for any questions. Again, apologies for being so late. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you very much for this wonderful class. Sorry that you had to rush from work. I know this winter time doesn't suit devotees from the UK, but I really sincerely really thank you from the bottom of my heart that you really rushed and tried to attend this. It shows your love and it shows your humility and your kindness. Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, can you please elaborate on this emotion through Shastra and emotion? I didn't understand that. Maybe I wasn't paying attention, but...
No, thank you. Hare Krishna. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak. So Maharaj is basically saying that, so Kanishta Adhikari is someone that has got weak faith, for example, that an event can take place and a particular event can take place, and we can basically use a verse outside the context of the Shastras. For example, there's this chapter, like I said, it's from verse 20 to 31. The ladies of Hastinapura are basically glorifying Krishna, and that's basically those verses. And within that chapter, the context is that Krishna is leaving for Dwarka. So it's important that we contextualize and use the Shastra appropriately. So we can't just, almost like a paintbrush, or almost like a hammer. This is a good example. So there's a saying: every nail requires the same hammer. For one particular person, they might uncontextualize and use the same verse on the same kind of nail. For example, a nail can have a plain surface, it can have a line, or it can have a cross. And there's different kind of tools that you can use to screw the nail in. For example,
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. I know that you are talking, but we can't hear you, Prabhuji. If you switch off your video, maybe you can probably then your voice will not break. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
But
Prabhuji, we can't hear you. I can see a green box around your, but we can't hear you.
Someone with a hammer might think, and one verse, they might go around and try to hammer different kinds of nails in, or different circumstances which are represented by the name verse. So in the Shastra, it's basically says, this is also in line with the Yodha Dinastan. Give me your youth, for, and whoever doesn't agree with the urine, it's like them drinking urine, a request. And the reason why he didn't do that is because the father was with other women, and that was the reason why. He doesn't make him a bad person. It doesn't make it Hello.
Yes, Prabhuji, I can hear you. Yes.
Sorry, Mataji. I think the connection is very bad. The internet connection is very bad here. I'm very sorry, Mataji. So the point I was trying to make is, it's the context. The verse has to be used in the correct context. We can't say this particular verse was basically saying that whenever a son denies the request of a father, it's similar to him drinking urine. But this personality that denied the request, he was a pure devotee of the Lord. He was an elevated personality. And just because someone might say, okay, my father requested that I underdo this activity, which is probably against Shastra, like, oh, have a drink or something like that. Just because you deny it doesn't mean that it's like drinking urine. It's not. That's the incorrect contextualization of the verse. It doesn't mean that we should say everything, say yes to everything that my father asked me to do. That's an example. So Kanishta Adhikari sees it like that, but a Madhyama Adhikari, he sees the emotion through the Shastra. So he sees, okay, I shouldn't do this activity, and I should basically try to moderate my emotion in the correct way, not try to use the Shastra as almost like a paintbrush and try to apply it everywhere in the incorrect context. Hope that makes sense, Mataji. Yeah. So it's important. There's a nice class by Chaitanya Charan Prabhu. I'll share it with you, and then you can share it with the devotees. It's a very nice answer to this question. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. I think we are a little challenged here because of technology, so we'll appreciate if you share that class. Are there any other questions or comments for Prabhuji?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandvat Pranam. Prabhuji, you were saying about knowing Krishna, and knowing Krishna is not very easy, and we all know that it's a process. I mean, maybe many births process to start even knowing Krishna. Like Prabhupada has given all the rules and regulations, like chanting with devotion, and then associating with devotees, and reading shastras, and all these protocols he has given. So if we are able to follow all the protocols, and then this may be a closer near future, we can realize that we can know Krishna better. So is it that that we have to follow the protocols what given by Prabhupada and our Gurujan, that we realize that truth in the near future?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you, Ariyagonda Prabhu, for your question. Yes, Prabhu, absolutely right. We have a process, we have the rules and regulations there, the basic standard requirement for us to actually even start. That's the foundation requirement for us to actually start even our path to becoming more devotional, more attracted towards Krishna, and developing that bhakti for Krishna, that devotion. And we're Rupanugas. Rupanugas basically mean we we follow in the footsteps of Rupa Goswami, and Rupa Goswami basically create this process that we follow in devotion. So we don't sort of we don't mimic, we don't copy. We just follow the process that's for example, assisting to the devotional service, having the day ashtra, and the consciousness is changed. Like a really nice point that Chandramuri Maharaj said as well in this talk about difference between knowing Krishna and actually knowing Krishna, is he said that in the Bhagavatam, it basically says that the Bhagavatam purifies the heart. It removes basically all the contamination. And he said it's such an important element of becoming purified is that every day, like you're doing, like ISKCON Elder is doing, we study the Bhagavatam, because that purification is taking place. And we have the acharyas in our line. We have the proof. We have the proof that the process works. We just need to do the activity. We need to do the action to get the results. If there's no action, then there's not going to be any result. So you're right, Prabhu. Absolutely. We've got everything there for us. We've got Prabhupada's books. Everything's translated. We don't have to go through the arduous work of translating all the literature. So we're very fortunate that we've actually got all the translation of the literature. We've got the Bhagavad Gita, we've got the Bhagavatam, we've got the CC, and there's other devotional writings that even Prabhupada's disciples, like Bhanu Maharaj, he's translating such detailed elements of scripture, some really esoteric topics on Krishna consciousness. So we have those as well for people that are at that level of Krishna consciousness. So everything's there for us, within our ISKCON institution. It's there that we can utilize, and that we can perform to actually move forward in our Krishna consciousness. Then we can really know who Krishna is, and we can always ask. When we get the association of more senior devotees, like I was listening to Chandramuri Maharaj, there's a difference. I can understand that he knows Krishna because he was talking Shastra verses. I could feel that he really believed what was being described in the Shastra, and the sort of the force that he was trying to demonstrate by his speaking. I felt that as well. So so associating with devotees is also very important, and the Shastra talks about it. That we may get some bhakti. Some of it's like chaya bhakti, or chaya is basically like shadow bhakti, shadow devotion. So when we're around personalities, we actually take on their devotion. We get elements of it. So that's also another reason why we should associate with senior devotees, because we get a taste of what they have. So for Hare Krishna. Hope.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Hari Govind Prabhu, for that question, and Prabhuji for answering that question. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay. If there are no more questions or comments, can I request Hari Govind Prabhu to kindly end the session, Prabhuji? Is it possible? Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji, for this wonderful session. You gave a lot of information about Edu dynasty. Lot of lineage from where Krishna appeared, and then a lot of information was given, and also important points were covered on knowing Krishna, and then how to commit ourselves to Krishna consciousness to progress towards knowing Krishna. So actually, as you mentioned the points, that we are sitting on a mountain of fortune. Actually, we have all the Vedic literature, it's ready, ready, palatable food which is offered to us. We just have to, eat, make the effort of eating it and then digesting it. So I had heard in one lecture of Amrita Prabhu that Narottama Das Thakur and I think two other Srivas Thakur, they used to write the copies of the Bhagavatam, and then they used to distribute. So each copy was written, and then distributed, and then again write it. So we don't have that, we have when we have to open the Veda base, we just get everything. or we go to any ISKCON center, we get the entire set. So we are basically sitting on a mountain of fortune, where we need to utilize, as you said, we need to practice on a day-to-day basis, and then get the result of knowing Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. I just request all the devotees to unmute and then chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra once in glorification of His Grace Bircandra Prabhu.
Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Krishna
Krishna
Krishna,
Krishna, Hare
Hare
Hare,
Hare, Hare
Hare
Rama,
Ram, Hare
Hare
Ram,
Rama, Ram
Ram
Ram,
Ram, Hare
Hare
Hare.
Hare. Vanchakalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo
Vaishnavebhyo namo namo. Anantakoti Vaishnavendra ki jai.
Govinda
Srila
ki
Prabhupada ki
jai,
jai.
Prabhupada ki
Vaishnava ki
jai.
jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Bol.
Thank you,
Hare
Prabhuji.
Krishna. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you
Hare
very much, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Matri. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Our Path Prabhuji had a minor fall, and he has his elbow has been operated on yesterday.
Oh.
He's doing okay, but if we can just chant one Hare Krishna mantra for him so that he recovers soon. We really appreciate it.
Hare Krishna, Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna. Hare
Krishna,
Krishna.
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Ram Ram Hare Hare.
Hare
Thank you
Hare.
very much. Hare Krishna.